the exit, take a right. And
I got a nice, I have a super red hawk.
you take an immediate left. It's ethical,
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can shoot bear with that.
That's what I carried. and then when I
right?
tracked it and
Chuck,
found it.
Chucker Bowl,
Chuckers?
Chucker.
In Rush City?
Yeah.
No, Chuckers is behind
Probably
I'd rather just hand hunt.
a black color too. before.
the bowling alley.
Oh.
Yeah. Two of them, but
What was that? Got a meeting there.
St. Croix River Ed District.
Boys, that's my problem now. I just started having the sites.
Yeah.
I could,
it's cold, so you want to be in your stand. And then
my brother had found cross. He said this.
yeah, those are good. They're
I would do that
accurate.
before I bow hunt. Yeah, at least. you're not gonna- So. all my brothers lots of- And then this year, we lost one of our big bucks.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
My niece's husband.
I didn't go to the extension committee meeting either.
Unfortunately, I knew my girl, but I thought I'd take the shot. Try to get him later. He lost a big.
Durham resigned.
We all.
Oh, really? You know,
Yeah, he lost.
a while ago, I think, well, it's
Never
probably.
got Yeah. One right through him.
Sent me an email.
Somebody Reese.
Yeah. Forgot.
I have more
Wasn't
respect.
that I went to them, I just.
Okay, it is 10 o'clock. And before we rise for the pledge, this is the Pine County Board meeting. You're invited to join, of course, in person or remotely. And if you are on remote, we welcome you. Anything I say here, if you're not already connected, probably you're not going to hear anyway. But we welcome people. We live stream this, and you can go to our website anytime and follow along on our meetings. So with that, we will call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public forum. Do we have anybody here that wishes to speak at public forum? Gussie,
Yeah. I'm gonna try not to take too much time. I don't want to.
you got
Want me to get up here?
3 minutes, so.
Okay, I'll give you as much as I can in that 3-minute time frame. I'm looking at item 5 on the regular agenda about the change in voting machines. And being an election judge, I understand what we need, not being able to update what we have. But there are some problems if you're looking at Dominion. It's one of the ones that I would be strongly against. Smartmatic, Dominion, Sequoia. Those 3 names, they're all part of the same system. They're all bought and under the same system. This group also created the voting machines for Venezuela and the software, firmware, the hardware for the rigged election in Venezuela. It's used in several states, I would say probably 24 states in the United States, the northern tier of counties in Minnesota. We don't need this problem. We don't need Dominion. We do not need it. Anything that says Smartmatic, Sequoia, and Dominion, we don't want part of any part of. And this has not been cleared up no matter what anybody says. This is still under investigation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, we'll look to adopt the agenda. Any additions, corrections?
Mr. Chair, just some additional information for agenda item 1A, the Pine County purchasing policy. There should be a updated copy at your place.
Ludwig will move as amended.
Motion by Ludwig, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? Oh, JJ
Yep.
did it? Sorry. I got my hearing aid again too.
Yeah, that's all right.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We'll look to approve the minutes of November 16th County Board meeting and summary for publication.
I'll move to approve that.
I'll second that.
Motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes of the boards, reports and correspondence, the Pine County Zoning Board of October 28th, 2021. Pine County Chemical Health Coalition minutes, November 8th, 2021, and Pine County Land Surveyor monthly report from November of 2021.
So move, Ludwig.
Lovegren was second.
Motion by Ludwig, second by Lovegren. Any discussion, questions? Yes.
I would like to say that we just came back from the AMC conference, and one of the conferences that I went to was on the surveying of the state of Minnesota and how we need to get our surveying up to date so that we can do our land better. And Pine County is one of the top on our surveying and having our county surveyed. And I was able to thank Robin for that today, but just publicly, I'd like to say that we are very blessed to have him, and he's doing an amazing job. And we are, just to see us being one of the top counties was exciting. So shout out to Robin.
Thank you, Terry. And I'm gonna add on to that. If you think, oh, whoopee. But it actually financially, for every one of us that buy a piece of property, we want a surveyor for crucial survey and whoever you hire to be able to go to a monument that might be only a half a mile down the road and pull off of that saves you probably more than half, maybe 75% of what a survey would cost if they got to go back and dig and dig and dig and find the stuff that Robin has spent his career digging up and remonumenting those things. So it's a good thing. We're glad we're doing it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do you know how far along we are on remonumenting? Resetting the monuments?
A little over 3/4 done, I think.
Okay.
Robin said this morning, they've done all the easy ones. Now
It's
it's
the swamps.
through the swamps and whatever, but
And the
it
mosquitoes.
still needs to get
Yeah,
done.
not to put him out of business, but I think about 10 years, he figures we'll have everything outside of all up there, the state forest lands, because we probably won't ever do the boundary, but we probably won't ever go inside there. 10 years and most of them.
Nice.
Thanks. Okay, we got a motion on the floor and a second. Any more questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Look for approval of the consent items.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda or the consent items.
I'll second.
Motion by Lovegren, seconded by Ludwig. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moves us to our regular agenda, Finance and Investment Committee report.
I'll start.
you
I'll
gonna
start.
take
it,
that?
Mr. Yeah, I'll start it, Mr. Chair. We had our meeting on November 29th and went over the Pine County purchasing policy. And I'm sure you've all read it, the red line stuff, but we made some changes. And there's a lot of detail. I'm not gonna read every red line thing, but I do want to comment. And we also then went over we updated the Pine County capital asset policy. So probably the most important thing is at the end of this meeting, we're having discussion and it just doesn't make sense for two people to understand all this stuff and go through the minutia and because it's hard to explain all that detail here in a board meeting. So we're gonna have a committee of the whole meeting and have the whole board there, and then we're gonna go through this kind of in a detail, so every commissioner is on the same page. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
So that's what we'll do.
I think Matt and I and Kelly and David all came to the same conclusion. I mean, that's really our response, our fiduciary responsibility is ours. we can blame anybody we want, but it's our responsibility. So I think we would feel more comfortable, the more people know, the more better we all are. I think we've done a great job bringing you guys that are new to the board along through the budget process. But I think we do have a lot of different funds and a lot of different.
Yeah.
Our policy needs to be understood. And especially our purchasing policy, because there's nothing worse than getting cornered by somebody at Walmart and them thinking because they heard that we bought something and it wasn't kosher. We follow our policy, we follow state guidelines, and people need to understand that. We need to make sure we really understand it. So any questions on that?
No, but I think I want to move the changes in the language, Mr. Chair, so they. And then there was the addition today, I think cleared up one of the grammar on one. Would have been section 5.
Yeah, section 5, Roman numeral 2 at the top of what's labeled
Roman
page 2
numeral
on the
2.
handout.
That's what that cleared up, that one, so. I'll move those changes, Mr. Chair.
I'll second it.
A motion by Ludwig, seconded by Lovegren. Any discussion, questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is this just for the purchasing policy that we're talking about?
No, both.
Both?
Yep. The capital asset policy too. Sorry. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. Any more questions from the board? If not, all in favor, say aye.
All right,
Opposed? All right. We'll move-
I know, just a comment. I'd like to
Yep.
get that committee of whole is, you know, if we can get it in
fairly soon.
sooner the better, yeah.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just make one comment, it's in the last paragraph of the minutes, just to note that the Housing and Redevelopment Authority did appoint Kelly Schroeder as their fiscal agent,
Yes.
which I think is a very positive move and will help stabilize and clarify their finances, but just want everyone to know that that's another hat that she's going to be wearing.
Right.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
It's an important one.
Yeah, thanks for stepping up.
We'll move on to the University of Minnesota Extension.
And we have Mary Jo Catras and some others are online to make the presentation.
All right.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting us to share with you about some of the work that we are proposing to do in Pine County. Would you like me to share my screen we have a few slides?
Sure.
Okay, I think someone's gonna need, oh, there we go. Perfect. So again, my name is Mary Jo Catras, and I am with the Center for Family Development at the University of Minnesota Extension. And we're going to share with you a bit about a proposed project that we are wanting to partner with Pine County on, building family and community resiliency, taking a multi-level approach to mental well-being education. And so I'm joined today by my colleagues here, and we will each talk a little bit about the work of this project. And as we go, we'll introduce ourselves and kind of who we're with and kind of the piece of work that we will be each taking lead on as we propose this project to you all. I just want to share that you should have all received our full proposal. I know this was talked about or introduced a while back, but you should have received our full proposal with a packet of information for today's meeting. So I just want to make sure that everyone has that. So we're going to give kind of a short overview of that and kind of hone in on some key points, and then we'll have some time for questions. So really the project that we'll be sharing with you today is about supporting the mental well-being of Pine County youth, families, and the community as a whole. We take at the University of Minnesota within our centers, youth development and family development, we take an integrated approach to this work. We know how important it is for us to focus on the whole family and the whole community. And that's why, as you reviewed the proposal, you can see that integrated throughout, that we're not just focusing on youth or parents or just teachers or other community partners, but we really know that we need to take that integrative approach where we are providing education for all different audiences, our youth, parents, families, caregivers, our teachers, and other community partners that are working to support mental well-being across the county. The impetus for this work came out of our conversations with Becky Foss from Health and Human Services, and I know that she's on. We've been working closely with her the last 3 years to do some work around substance use disorders and the opioid crisis in Pine County. And so working with her and just identifying some of those needs around substance use, she shared with me about a report or an environmental scan that was done in pre-COVID time that really identified some of those key needs in Pine County, and mental well-being being one of them, along with substance use disorders as well as obesity. And so really, we know from our work that in order to address these issues around obesity, around substance use, around mental health, that we really need to go what we call below the surface. So we look at the analogy of an iceberg and know that, that obesity and substance use and mental health issues sit at that top of part of the iceberg. But we need to go deep and we need to understand what's happening, what are the root causes, what's happening underneath that iceberg. So that is the metaphor that we use as we talk about this work, and you'll see that thread being pulled about through the proposal that we'll be talking about today. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Susan Bolio, to talk a little bit about trauma and mental health.
Yes, thank you, Mary Jo. So my name is Susan Bolio, and I'm in family development, family resiliency. A lot of my work has focused on trauma and building resilience and healing. So we often think of trauma as like this big T thing, like it has to be abuse or neglect or something really big. But actually, trauma is what happens inside of us when something happens outside that activates our stress response system, and we don't have the internal resources to regulate ourselves or the external supports to help us be able to regulate and move through that, whatever that event was. So just sort of really quickly at a high level, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study was conducted in the early 1990s. And some of the things that they found is that these traumas or these adversities that young people experience has what's called a dose-response relationship. So the more ACEs you have, the more likely you are to experience poor mental health outcomes, poor social health outcomes, poor physical health outcomes through the duration of your life. And trauma really impacts the way that the brain develops, how the brain wires, how the brain functions, what we perceive as threats, and therefore how quickly our stress response gets activated, or how quickly we might dissociate and check out, which is another part of coping mechanism when we are in the fight or flight response. And I was actually listening to NPR this morning when I was dropping my kids off at school, and they were talking about how in the schools they're finding sort of across the country, kids are just more dysregulated than ever. They go from 0 to 100, very angry, very upset. But we know that these things didn't start, like they didn't just emerge. As Mary Jo mentioned, like the mental health of our children and our families has been, people have been struggling for a while, and the last 2 years have just really exacerbated what was already happening. So ACEs are really common, and the impacts of ACEs and unresolved trauma affect our communities and our families, and it affects all of us whether we know it or not. And this trauma can compound over time and through the generations, and unfortunately trauma just doesn't naturally resolve itself. But we also know that trauma and ACEs are only one piece of the puzzle, that positive childhood experiences can be even more impactful than ACEs, in that children who have low ACE scores but also low positive childhood experiences are worse off than kids who have high ACE scores, but high positive childhood experiences. So really supporting young people and families to build those positive childhood experiences are critical. And just sort of the last thing I'll say is, one of the main things that trauma does is it disconnects us. It disconnects us from ourselves so that we're no longer feeling we're sort of checked out and numb, but that also keeps us then from being able to connect with others. So in this space of like healing, it really is about learning how to regulate the nervous system so we can stay with whatever is coming up for us, but also so we can hold that space in a good way for others who are also struggling. Thank you, Miigwech. I'm not sure, Mary Jo, who's next, so I'll let you go ahead and pass it on.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Garbo.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for inviting us today. My name is Jennifer Garbo, and I'm an extension educator in the Center for Family Development. My regional office is located in Cloquet on the Fond du Lac Reservation. And I have been doing this work, specifically substance use disorder and mental health within the communities for the last 3 years. So I want to talk to you about our approach, which is a multi-level approach to mental well-being, whole community, whole family approach. So our project team plans to collaborate with teachers and staff from East Central School and other community partners. Our extension staff will host community conversations, which are really important because when putting forth a proposal for a project, we have some existing information and we also have some existing work that we're building on, but we also recognize that Pine County has their own specific needs, their own culture within the community, within the school, within the different systems. And so we really want to listen and to learn and to add value to what is already happening, and also to identify gaps within programming and services available to families and communities, and so that we can work in partnership to develop new resources and new programming and new opportunities. So our focus will be to learn about the existing programs that are in place that are already supporting mental well-being, identify program gaps, and begin to develop a plan in collaboration with the local partners that exist within the communities already. The whole family piece is really important. We knew it before we embarked on this type of work, but it's become even more evident that when children are struggling, it's important for them to have resources available within their home, as well as within the schools and communities. And so we're proposing a series of activities and different types of learning opportunities for families to better understand what their children are experiencing, but also what they're experiencing as parents and grandparents and caregivers. We hope to build their own resiliency so that they're able to better help their children and their grandchildren, and also their community. So we understand that within the home, a lot of things can be mushroomed out into the places and spaces that families occupy in their everyday lives. Okay, Mary Jo.
Thank you. So I'm just going to quickly go over some of our project goals that you saw listed in the proposal. The first goal is to create opportunities for Pine County family and community members to work together to support each other's mental well-being. We know, as I shared at the beginning, is that we can't just focus on youth. We can't just focus on families, but together holistically, we can help to provide education and the tools and the resources families and youth and parents and caregivers and everyone needs, so that we can practice those strategies, those methodologies, and we can model good behavior for each other. And so that becomes something that families, helps to bring that family, build those family relationships, build those strong resiliency in families and communities and in our schools. And together we can really support each other around mental well-being. To reduce stigma and mental health, around mental health by creating safe spaces for youth and parents and grandparents to talk about their mental well-being. As you can see throughout the proposal, and we'll talk about some of the activities in just a second, but it really helps to create that safe space. It really starts to normalize the talk around mental health, and that it's something that we all have mental health, mental well-being, right? And so really being able to provide space for those conversations to happen and for those conversations to naturally happen at home or in school with teachers and trusted adults for our youth. That is so important in this work. To develop coping skills for youth parents and grandparents to support the integration of mental wellness education within families, within schools, and across Pine County. So kind of touched about around that as well, but really, really looking at what are those skills needed and how can we really plant the seed for those skills in our youth at a really young age, so that they are, as they're growing and developing and they are facing different things in their lives throughout their development, that they have the skills to cope around, to support their own mental health and to reach out for help when needed. And also to increase opportunities for youth, family, and community to feel connected and supported. And when you never, families never want, we never want families to feel alone, that they don't know where to reach out to when they see something happening in their youth. What do they do? And I think that's a common issue that a lot of families face right now is, they see these things happening, particularly as Susan pointed out, during COVID and all of the things that youth have been navigating, and there's different behaviors or different just things that our parents are observing in their youth. And how do you handle that? Who do you turn to? What are those skills that we need as parents and as community members to help our youth cope? And one of the things I wanted to just also say that this work isn't just starting. I know that Pine County is doing work and there's many things happening across the county that we can build on with this opportunity. And then, like I shared at the beginning, we've been working with Becky Foss around our opioid crisis through the last 3 years. And we know that substance use disorder and trauma are connected. And so really being able to connect that within this work is really important for us too. So we're building the capacity of this within the county throughout both of these opportunities. Now I'm going to turn it over to, I think I'll turn it Jennifer first and then to Jan.
Sure, thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the activities that we propose. One, I think, really exciting piece to this project is the opportunity to provide activities simultaneously to youth, parents, and grandparents. When we sat and had kind of our visioning sessions and talked about what this project might look like, it became really evident to us that it was important to provide resources and education, not just to the students, but to the families, and even thinking and understanding that a lot of grandparents are raising their grandchildren, and that also can create some additional barriers to resources. It can make them feel isolated. And so, we thought to have, if you could envision in the school, having multiple classrooms where simultaneously programming is happening for parents and grandparents at the same time it's happening for youth. And so some of the classes that we would offer would be self-regulation. And this is a focus on what happens in the body when a person is feeling dysregulated, like Susan was mentioning, and how that's connected to your nervous system. There are tools that we can teach to help practice self-regulation. Another class would be being present. This class will focus on the power of being present and helping to co-regulate and strengthen relationships. So again, within the context of family, strengthening those relationships and those communication skills, as well as the relationships with external resources, such as resources within the school system, resources within the county. Another class we would offer is a basic attachment class. And this would focus on some very basic understandings about attachment theory and help the students and parents and grandparents to understand the relationships to one another and the importance of creating a safe and secure place for children to thrive in. Let's see. Some additional examples of youth activities specifically, as many of you I know are aware of, our Center for Youth Development that's where our 4-H lives. Our 4-H program lives in our Center for Youth Development. And we would collaborate with school staff to identify teens to be youth leaders. We think this is really important to young people develop skills and new ways of being able to learn and practice how to be a leader within their families, within the schools, within the communities. Program topics could include yoga, mindfulness, outdoor activities such as nature walks, connecting. We understand that mental health, there's a big component of nature that also exists, in grounding students and families to nature and in the natural world really helps to alleviate a lot of anxiety and stress and tension that they're feeling. So we could lead a series of events around nature and having nature support mental health and well-being. And I think I will pass along to Jan for some additional information about activities we're proposing.
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer, and good morning.
Thank you.
So as Mary Jo has mentioned, I am Jan Drodowski. I work in the Northeast region and have been working in Pine County for the last couple of years in a supervisory role. And so Jennifer already hit on some of those activities, but 4-H and youth development will really be focusing on those youth components, walking alongside our colleagues in family development and supporting the youth aspect of those pieces. And Mary Jo, if you'd move on to the next slide. This next slide is we call it the pyramid of youth quality. And this represents a ton of research that has gone into thinking about how you design and then deliver youth programs, how we engage young people and our adult volunteers in the case of 4-H. It talks about quality at the point of service, and that's where young people come together, either young people and young people, or young people with adults or staff like the folks that you're hearing from today. I want to point out, especially as we're talking about young people who have experienced trauma. The bottom of the pyramid talks about creating a safe environment. Young people are going to learn best when they feel comfortable and safe. So oftentimes we think about physically keeping young people safe, but this proposal really hones in and identifies the need for emotional safety. You've heard my colleagues talk about emotional regulation, learning those skills to be able to do that. First and foremost, they have to feel safe and comfortable in the physical space they're in, and then comfortable with the adults and young people they're working with. So we're really going to focus on activities that are going to build those relationships. As you look up that pyramid, we talk about interaction, and Jennifer mentioned, using young people in a leadership role. 4-H, I think, does an exceptional job of this, really engaging our older teens to help us design and deliver those programs. And so they work in partnership with staff to do that. Who better than a young person to know what kids want to do and what they're interested in? And so that is most certainly the approach we're going to take, regardless of the space or the particular audience that we're working with. We'll do that in collaboration with community partners, with the colleagues you see here, and with our existing 4-H programs. We do that through hands-on learning, project-based learning. We weave those social emotional skills into that conversation as kids are learning about different projects, whether that be dogs or cooking or horses or whatever those young people are interested in. And so we are excited to be a part of this proposal. With that, I want to pause and turn it over or open it up for questions from the group. If you have any questions for any of us about the proposal.
Thanks, this is Steve, and I think it will dovetail into what Terry and Becky and Reese and everybody's been working on with kids, and I think we have an opportunity to move the needle in some of these communities. So I commend you for putting a program together.
Well, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Terry's got.
I do, Jan. This is Terry.
Okay.
Mental health is huge right now, and you're right. We've got a lot of grandparents raising their grandchildren. How do you plan on getting into some of those houses where it's going to be really difficult? Do you have any plans on how to do that? I think of all the houses that are way out in the country in our county, because we have a lot of way out in the country in our county, where it's not so accessible. So and there's a lot of needs out there. I guess I'm just wondering what the plans are to get to those families.
So I can I'll just add, start, and then please, anyone else can add from my team. I think, we are all about meeting families where they are at. And so if we think about, we want to make sure that we are reaching those families, like you said, those that are maybe a little bit more isolated or have less access to resources. And we know the barriers of transportation in rural areas and those kind of things. So really, we will be working with community organizations that are doing some of this work already, or connecting with them and asking them to partner with us so that we are joining events that are already happening, joining projects that are already happening, or that we need to start something new and figure out what does that look like to make sure that we are being inclusive of everybody that is in need of this program. So we, sometimes we have to think outside the box, and we have to become innovative about how we approach it. But that will be part of our initial conversations as we start this work, is to make sure that we are reaching those isolated families that really probably need our help the most.
Thank you. There's so much going on right now that it's a very high need. And so I appreciate you stepping up to do this.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have two questions, if I may, and this is Dave Minke. And the first question is, looking at the timeline, it looks like January through May 2022 is primarily capacity building, getting the infrastructure lined up. But then the program rollout looks like it's September of 2022. Is there any way that there could be events over the summer, or is that just too soon?
I think when we do this work, when we kind of put timelines together, it's our best guess, right? And we know, working with communities, things can happen faster and things can happen slower, right? But it would be our intention at the beginning of this kind of program development piece, and the capacity building, is to have those conversations and to review the timeline and check in to see if this is reasonable, and really try to get things started as soon as we can. I wanted to give enough time so that we weren't behind already before we start, because sometimes we do that, but I wanted to create space for those conversations with community partners so we can be very intentional about this work. But yes, that is a possibility, to get some things that are already happening, that we can move those forward while we're still working on other things that you see listed in the proposal. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you. And I just think that there's kids, if that's the target audience, once they're out of school, there's an opportunity to really catch them in some positive activities. And my second question is, we know that extension is very focused on data and using research to inform decision-making and program design. And I'm just wondering if there's or what the plan is for performance measurement, and then reporting back to the county board on what the impact actually is, if there's a plan to do that periodically.
Yes. So thank you for bringing that up. That was something that we did not mention in here. Yes, we both of our centers have evaluation teams that can help to curate an evaluation, build an evaluation, and then implement the evaluation throughout this entire timeline. So we will be probably taking a developmental evaluation approach, where we won't just do something at the beginning and at the end, but we will be infusing it throughout the process, so that we're making sure that we're hitting the mark, and that we're having impact along the way, and that we will definitely, whether whatever the request is of the board for us to come in, at every, 6 months or a year or whatever that increment might be, to share where we're at and where we can share some of the outcomes of the programs that we're doing, or the outcomes of the work that we're doing. And so, yes, that will be a piece. And then we will, the foundation of this work is built upon our research-informed, evidence-based curriculums and tools that we use. And so note that is something that we, obviously at the university, that's, what we do, right? And so that will be part of, being able to evaluate this process and these programs as well.
Thank you. And Mary Jo, I think framed a question for the board to consider as to when you would like follow-up, and then maybe is there a role for the extension committee in this program as well to be involved in some oversight?
Well, I'm on the extension committee and I would like to be involved. I think it's a good program. The other question that I have for you is, looking at your timeline, you have that you're going to meet with teachers and staff from East Central School and other community partners. What about like Kingley, Finlayson, Pine City, and Willow River? Do you have plans to meet with them also?
Yes, I think that we know that there's existing partnerships at the East Duluth Central School, and so that's why we put that in for sure. But there will be a ripple effect, and so as we're doing programming in that school, we will be connecting to the other schools in other parts of the county and the community to, figure out best practices and adapt things that might be more useful for that community or that school. And so, yes, so they will be part of the conversation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for letting us go a little bit over. We're very passionate about what we do, and so we tend to talk a lot about it. So thank you. We appreciate your time.
We have a lot of very passionate people in our county. One of them sitting here in the back of the room, Terry Fawcett. I don't know if you haven't connected with him, do so this week, because he has some great insight of what they're doing already in East Central and around the county.
We will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The board, if you're comfortable, you could authorize the allocating the $75,000 for the program, and that would be kind of the signal that they can move forward.
I'll make a motion that we spend $25,000 per year for 3 years, so $75,000 total of our ARPA funds to go towards this program.
I'll second.
We got a motion made and seconded, motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore, for the ARPA fund expenditure of $75,000 over 3 years. Any discussion, questions? Not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. We'll move on to the Development Authority Study Committee report. Before you guys even start, I want to commend you. This is the fastest study ever in the history of Pine County that came back. You guys did yeoman's work, so thank you. I don't know who's gonna.
Do you want to frame up the whole thing or just go into like a report?
Yeah, well, so big picture, the county board has been looking at economic development as a priority for a number of years. We have identified that there's a lack of tools and a lack of resources. And so we focused on strategies that would provide resources and tools. And so the resources was to hire an economic development coordinator, and that's Leslie Sauter. And then the tools would be to create a development authority. And in the statute, there's 3 primary development authorities. There's housing and redevelopment authorities, there's economic development authorities, and there's port authorities. And each one of them are a little bit different, but generally they all have the statutory authority to do development and redevelopment activities. And so the statute requires the board create a study committee with a particular membership that represents cities, townships, and the existing development authorities. And that was the committee that met and made a recommendation. Is that helpful, Josh, for a frame up?
Yep. I think so. And you want me to kind of go through this or?
Yeah, I have some notes too. I can.
Okay. Yeah, so we did have our first meeting. We elected a chair, Mary Kay Sloan, and a vice chair. And I said it was all her fault, or not fault, but she did such a great job. We got it done in one meeting, basically. But yeah, we had a lot of conversation about the direction of the HRA board and the Economic Development Board. And I think, I mean, pretty much, long story short, that's what we decided, to merge these boards together and make it an HRA/EDA development authority. So there was, we had a lot of people there, a lot of good discussion. And I think it just will provide a nice front for the county. All the EDAs that were there were very excited about it. And I don't know, I guess that's really what happened out of there.
Yeah, one question that, I'm sorry, I forgot who brought it up, but they were questioning, maybe you could elaborate, involving the Mille Lacs corporate also with this at somehow, some point.
Yeah, so Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures is the economic development arm of the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. And we have worked with them on a number of projects. I think once we get clarity and a development authority formed and functioning, we would look to engage with Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures in various projects.
One of the things that did come up is how big a board it would be, as if it was a 5-person board or a 7 was the other option. And I think what we're looking at is just doing the 5-person board, essentially the way we have the HRA right now. Then it's 1 person from each district, each commissioner district. So it does cover the whole county. And us as commissioners are probably just going to be kind of a liaison type of thing for now. So,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so I don't know, I'm trying to remember at our HRA. I'm a little bit torn with liaison versus a voting commissioner. And the reason I say that is because who knows what's gonna happen downstream, you know, with levying authority and things like that. And I don't know how best to connect oversight with the board and spending and things like that. So that's something we may have to discuss. I guess I'm not against having a commissioner, expanding the board to have commissioners sit that can vote. I can stay as a liaison. I don't know if I need to, if we have commissioners there. And I know JJ and Josh would be great on the board. They both have businesses, business minded. They come from each end of the county. So I don't know where we want to go with that discussion, but I think it's important for us to kind of have a vote at that. And I don't know, I'm just open for discussion on that. And
so one of the issues if we went to a 7-member board is then you have to have a resident of one of the HRA facilities as on the board. They have to be there. So essentially it would only free up 1 space for a commissioner. If
you could at least have 1 commissioner.
Yeah, you could have 1. So.
Yeah, well, that's I think is still
Well,
an advantage.
There's really nothing that stops the board from appointing a commissioner instead of somebody from our district. I mean, is there?
There's probably not a statutory limit to that. We'd probably want to look at that resolution that was adopted that created the district appointment, right? And just, if we had to amend that resolution, we could easily do that. But so in the gist, yes, you could appoint yourselves as the HRA commissioners.
The other thing I've thought about that is it forces us to be very deliberate about who we seek to be on our representatives. And I think we've done that now, as we've got an appointment coming up here soon for the zoning board. We've been very deliberate about people that are serious about being on it, you know, take their job serious. Can take the heat if they have to or whatever. And so, hey, I think there's a good reason to have some oversight, but if we want this thing to flourish, they also need to be somewhat autonomous from us.
Okay.
And
Sorry.
one of the things we had talked about is we could change it at any time, right? Is there like a waiting period or anything, or as far as the membership goes?
I'm going to turn a little bit to the attorney, but I presume that the board could amend the membership of the HRA that it is assigned the EDA powers to. It may have to follow the statutory process and maybe a public hearing would be required. But there would be a mechanism to make an adjustment in the future.
To go from 5 to 7.
Or to disband the HRA board. I mean, right? Couldn't we? Or once we go down this path.
No,
are we there
there's-
forever?
The answer is yes, but there's a statutory process.
Yeah,
And with the HRA, there are some contracts with the Federal Housing and Urban Development
right.
that we'd have to check all of those, what was committed to
Right.
as far as managing and operating HUD programs.
Right.
So, I mean, is that a yes with an asterisk that just says there would be a process?
It's not, I mean, we've had an HRA board since when?
1971.
1971. So we're not reinventing an HRA board. We're reinventing and reinvigorating their mission. And so,
And establishing an EDA.
right. Which is
Thing.
reinventing their mission.
And so if you want maybe just a little more nuance as to if you follow the recommendation of the study committee, assign the EDA powers to the HRA, the board could be the 5 members or the board could be 7 members at your discretion. And then each jurisdiction that wanted the EDA to operate within it would need to adopt a resolution saying we want the EDA to operate in our jurisdiction. And if they don't do that, the HRA powers still apply countywide. It's just the EDA the EDA powers that would be limited to the jurisdictions that opt in.
Well, I'm fine with I mean, we assigned a committee to study this and I'm fine with their recommendation.
Staying at 5 with the liaison.
Yeah.
So are we making a recommendation right now, right?
Well, it would be good for you to come to a consensus as to what you would like as the outcome, because then you would call for a public hearing, which we could hold as early as January 4th, where you would consider the actual resolution to assign the EDA powers to the HRA board.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're doing is just, yeah, I mean, that's what come out of there is that recommendation, so. And one of the things David had said is because right now they are an HRA board. And we're fairly comfortable that if it stayed only an HRA board, that we would lose some members. That a lot of them are very interested in economic development. And it does go hand in hand. It really does. So I think most of the members on the board are very excited to move forward as this way.
I agree. I think I definitely like a combination of the EDA to the HRA. I was just wanting to have a discussion on the governance or the way the board operated. That's it. So, because I sit as a liaison and my input is limited.
If we made you not a liaison and made you a voting member, then we would have to go to a 7-member board.
Or get rid of one of the people that are.
And which is fine. I'm not afraid to speak up and, explain the county's position on things. That's just fine. And somebody, I may be replaced next time a chair comes along anyway, but just, that's fine. I just want to have an understanding that we're all aware that sometimes it's nice to have, if it's nice to have a commissioner that could vote. And then that's another discussion. Somebody already had it. And I didn't mean to muddy the waters.
No,
Mr. Chair.
no.
No, because that was part of the discussion, was a lot of the discussion. And we never really necessarily limited it to how many commissioners could be. I mean, all of us could, well, essentially go, you'd have to, but if you had two on there, wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, no, and I think that the HRA board did in fact discuss the membership, and they would welcome commissioner membership. They would welcome a resident member. They're pretty agreeable to work with whatever board structure the county commissioners would like to see. But I think to reiterate comments that have already been made is the 5 people who are on the HRA board now are very interested in an active role in developing the community, working with the cities, working with the townships, in trying to improve the quality of life, the quality of the jobs, the diversity of the local economy.
Well, from what I understand, the cities and the townships were excited about this aspect too. It was something that they agreed with and were happy to have.
In the, if you were to ask what is, what do you see as any risks with this model moving forward? The risk is we're taking county staff, namely me, Leslie, and Kelly, and Reese is statutorily the attorney. But we'll have county staff now supporting this independent board. And so in my mind, it's very important that commissioners are, I guess, on board with working with that committee or with that HRA board, because we don't want to have a division, right? If the HRA is doing stuff that the county doesn't support, that will put your staff in an awkward position. And so if that happens, we have to be able to rectify those issues quickly.
Yeah, and I'm fine. It just, the liaison can
Yep.
make those connections, I think. And if we need to change it, we can.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me that we would have staff in that role, right? It's not a concern to me. It's just as commissioners, I hope you're aware that when we go down this road, it's an exciting time, but it's also a time where you'll have to remain engaged. It's not a, fire and forget type of event.
Great. All right, thank you for the discussion on that.
So what I'm hearing is we should have staff prepare a resolution for a public hearing.
Mhm.
We'll move forward, and that could take place in January, early January. All right, I don't believe that requires a motion. The next one does, zoning board appointments. Zoning board, some terms are up. District 1, Nancy Riss, District 3, Dirk Nelson, and at large, Patrick Schiffeldecker. They have all agreed to be reseated if we so desire. Just on a side note, I happened to be at Riss Farms yesterday making Nancy Riss as a Pioneer seed dealer. So I had to order my soybean seed for next year. And she said, I was kind of thinking maybe I should get off that board, but I kind of like it. And I really like Beacon. She's looking at something on there. So she's a good board member. All of them are good board members. They take it very serious and they catch their fair amount of heat for what they do. And they decide they're making decisions for somebody that wants to develop a piece of property based on the facts that as they're presented. And so I know they take some of the heat that gets deflected from us. So I appreciate their work.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to add, and I think I commented before, it's a really good board.
Yeah.
They are free thinkers, spirited discussion, don't agree with each other.
They are not afraid to speak up.
They hold their positions firm and they always end up with the right resolution at the end of the meeting. So it's a good board.
I agree.
We do need a motion to reappoint these folks.
I'll move that.
I will second it.
Got a motion by Moore, second by Lovegren, to reappoint Nancy Riss, Dirk Nelson, and Patrick Schiffeldecker to the zoning board. Any discussion, questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, voting equipment grant application. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Kelly Schroeder, County Auditor Treasurer. Before you today, you have a resolution to simply apply for a voting equipment grant. And the reason I'm bringing this before you today, so Pine County has been using the same voting equipment since 2006. Each polling place has to have an assistive voting device for folks that need help marking their ballot or reading or that type of thing. And then a lot of our polling places also have tabulators that simply count the votes. Those tabulators are what's really spurring the move. Our tabulators with their age are only supported by Windows 7, which was end of life last January. And so that's a concern, not that they're ever connected to the internet to propose a security risk, but having the backbone of those systems in unsupported operating system is something that the state's concerned about and something we should all probably be concerned about. I know Ryan in IT here worked very hard to get all of our computers off Windows 7, and this is one of the last pieces that needs to move. And so I am asking for the authority to apply for the grant. At this point, we don't have to decide which equipment we want to purchase. We don't have to decide if we're going to replace only the tabulation devices or only the assistive voting devices. My plan is, I think that when you look at the financial impact on the board request, the largest amount is if we replace both systems separately. And so I think I will just be applying for that amount. And if we don't need it, then we don't need it, but at least we have it if we do. For the finances, the county has worked really hard in establishing a dedicated elections fund. And that the first year we did that was 2019. And we thought we were going to end that year with about $65,000 in a fund balance to help for these types of things when they came up. But we got hit with 4 special elections and that ended that. So for 2020 and now 2021, we've had the same property tax levy. Obviously in 2020, we had an election, so there wasn't a lot of fund balance built to there, only about $6,000. But this year, with it being an odd year, we were able to have some fund balance grow. So by the end of this year, we will have a $65,000 fund balance that could assist with our portion of the equipment purchase that we would potentially need to make because these grants are only a 50% coverage. One thing that I really have my eye on is there's going to be an additional round of grant funding in the next couple months called the Help America Vote Act grants. And so that money can actually be used as part of our 50% match as well. So I'll be coming back to you in a couple months to ask to apply for that grant as well. So with the hope of it all, we're coming together with this grant, with the Vega grant, with the HAVA funds, and with potentially our fund balance. We should be able to pay for any one of these options, any one of these dollar amounts. If all else fails, there has been talk that ARPA funds could potentially be used as well, should we need to go down that route. Because at this point, it's not really can we not do it? Because we've waited this long, and now we're at the end of the line. As you heard Gussie speak, there's a lot of discussion around election equipment, obviously. Thus why I don't want to make the decision of what equipment we should purchase. And I don't think myself in a vacuum should be making that decision. I would really like to engage the election judges, engage the local election officials, even the local chairs of the political parties, and get input, work through this, figure out what makes sense, along with some potential commissioners sitting on an ad hoc committee. So with that, I have two requests for action today, is just to approve the resolution for myself to apply for the grant. And then the second one, to consider forming an ad hoc committee to assist in the equipment identification process. question.
Can I add to that? When we were sitting in the last election, we had machines that failed because we would go to test on them and they just quit working. They're so old that they wouldn't work anymore. So it's really necessary that we do take the time to look and see what we can find. And we really do need the new equipment because we held out for a long time.
Yeah, I don't think there's any
Yeah, yeah.
discussion about that. So we need a motion to allow Kelly to apply for the grant. That'd be our first motion.
Is that the resolution 2021-75?
Yes.
Correct.
I will make a motion to accept the resolution 2021-75.
I can second.
Is that you, Jay?
Yes.
Okay, we got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Waldham to approve resolution 2021-75. Any discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then you talked about a whole bunch of people on a committee.
Right.
So this committee work wouldn't start until later this winter, I would assume.
Well, I would think maybe January, we'd want to kick it off.
Okay,
Kind of the Vega grant from my work with the Secretary of State's office. We're one of very few counties in this situation still. So it's kind of a given that we should be getting the grant. And so I think it could take several meetings and maybe seeing demos and things like that to actually identify which equipment we'd want to purchase. So I would want to start that process potentially maybe in January, because it could be a longer process with several meetings, so that we're ready to go.
so
We both spread our legs.
just so I get this straight, if we find a couple of commissioners and we leave a seat for,
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
maybe this will simplify it.
Yeah.
If the county board simply creates an ad hoc committee of 2 commissioners, I think Kelly can do all of the other outreach and coordination.
oh, that's where I was getting involved.
I will move to let her set up an ad hoc committee for the.
I would second that also, if I can. I'd
And I
second.
appreciate the way your makeup of the committee too, that'll help. with a lot of things.
And if I could, that's when you say equipment identification, that is to research and look more at what we're talking about with the 3 brand names that have been
Correct.
controversy and
Correct.
look at everything. and
Right,
research.
because obviously there's a lot of moving parts to it. You want the reliable machine. There's a cost factor, obviously. But yet we need to have our election integrity intact at the end of the day. So I think that doing an ad hoc committee, hopefully we can get some buy-in across the board and make a good decision.
In that motion, I would also like to, I would like to have Terry Lovegren sit on that committee. And I would like one other commissioner. Is there anybody else that would? JJ Lovegren and Waldham will be the
That's perfect.
I would hope.
named county commissioners. So everybody got the motion clear in their mind?
Yes, sir.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, Kelly. Approval of the final contract 1903.
Yep, just looking for approval to make final payment of $29,887.05. And this was a bridge replacement up on the Kettle River on our 52. And I think we actually came a little bit under the original contract amount, so that's always nice to do that. So I don't know if you remember, they got caught with the flood, so they're building the piers, water came up, so then this thing carried over, started in 2019. They were pushing through, they worked their tails off to get the bridge done, but we ended up just holding off and doing the deck until the following spring, so it did. It's a 2019 contract, but we're finally,
Yeah,
not
it turned
because of
out-
anything they did, but we've got a few finals that are like 4 or 5 years old coming up, so this isn't our our longest one, so.
In the end, it turned out fine.
Yeah, it really did. So I don't know if there's any questions or.
No, thanks, Mark. We need a motion.
Ludwig will move.
Lundgren will second. Bet you're excited.
We got a motion by Ludwig, second by Lundgren for the final payment to contract 1903. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Right.
Opposed? Arrowhead County Association Legislative Priorities for 2022. Matt, you gonna take that?
I can. Well, they do it every year. They list, this is what the Arrowhead County Association, these are the priorities are putting down to, bringing down to AMC for this. And we can rank them and ourselves and send it back up to them, you know.
I did note that Pilt made the AMC list, so that helps.
Yeah, I don't know. ICWA's always hanging in there for me because that's our budget buster. And then probation funding is always in there for me too, so.
And Mr. Chair, if you want a few comments on
Yep.
some of these, because the wording is quite vague, and so if you haven't been following, they may not all be clear, but I think echoing Matt's comments that probation funding is probably in this context our top priority. The Arrowhead and even AMC often talks about the ICWA funding, and I think we should change the language a little bit and talk in terms of out-of-home placement funding.
Yeah.
So that it is more supportive of the tribes and makes it easier for the tribes to be on board. And that would be, I think, probably our second priority because it potentially is the most money for us. And then number 3 is the mental health funding. Number 4 is PILT. And number 5 is the Carleton County proposal.
Yeah, that's
My estimation.
And I don't know, I've explained the mental health fund to you guys a couple times, right? Coming off of that. It's not all the catchment funds. There's other funds the state has, but what happened is the state said, we're gonna have a new mental health initiative. And they're reaching out to grab our catchment dollars that come to our area and they're pulling them in. Well, then there was that fight last year and they said, no, you can't do that. But that's only good for 1 more year. And then they're gonna pull them in. So we're not gonna get the automatic help on our mental health anymore. It's gonna be more, I don't know how they're gonna divvy it up. They don't even have a model yet, according to John Ongaro. And when they get questioned on it, they don't answer. So there's that's on John's radar, the lobbyist up there. So he's pushing hard. So that's good for us because it's a huge impact to our county.
I think it's important to point out to our legislators, and John Ongaro has done this before for us, but we've got a $7.7 billion surplus. And I know there's a lot of people that say we're not gonna grow government just because we got money. Our contention has been, and I think should be, we're not asking to grow government. We're asking you to pay for the commitments that you made to us years ago, which would put probation funding at the top of my list. Fund that at the level you agreed to. Then you can tell me you have a surplus, because they really don't have a surplus until they have fulfilled their obligations to counties to do the state's work. And I think that's where we need to.
Yeah, we're off on our probation funding a lot. Yeah. Anyway, it was a big deal, and it seems like it's a simple statement there, but the level of care is in there, the paperwork that we don't have a choice when we get placed, and the Native American stuff is in there, and it's all in there. So John is doing a really good job of keeping that on their radar too, because it's a budget buster for other counties too, even more so than ours. But that one really hit us a couple years in a row, and we're lucky right now. But
Yeah, and if you can agree on a priority, then we can submit that to the Arrowhead Association.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's really hard for us as a county to weigh in and say, here's our priority. So.
Right.
I mean, I guess if,
I think, are you going to the meeting, Matt?
Well, no,
Okay,
I'm not. It's a dinner meeting and I'm not gonna make that. It's just, I don't think, I think we can just do this with an email
Okay,
back to Barb.
okay.
If we rank them.
Because sometimes at that meeting, you can kind of see how the flow of the meeting's going.
Oh, yeah.
And put your vote on something that you know is gonna.
And I missed that because I was down in Rochester, so. Yeah, they have the chart on the wall and everybody kind of jockeys.
yeah, and I think that's how they generate this list.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I would say two. I would say probation and ICWA. Or top.
Yeah, in my mind, the mental health funding and the PILT, the reason mental health funding would be higher on the list is there's probably more money on the changes that might happen at the legislature for us. That if it's positive, if it's negative, we stand to lose more. If it's positive, we stand to gain more.
And my read on it is PILT's gonna happen, no matter if it's our top priority or our bottom priority. They know it's one of our priorities, but there's people that it affects a lot more than us. We'll take what.
We don't have to push that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't waste a vote on it. That's what I'm saying.
No, but I think we need to keep the out-of-home placement funding right up in their face.
Yeah.
And the probation funding right up in
Yeah.
their face. I don't know, you guys can have, we can fight over 1 and 2.
Because they have lacked, it's something that they've known has been a problem. They keep telling us they don't have money, they don't have money.
Well, they set the formula, but they're not paying us. to the
Right,
formula.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So are you clear? As mine?
So in my mind, I have number 1 as probation funding, number 2 is out-of-home placement funding, number 3 is mental health funding, number 4 is PILT, and number 5 as Carlton project.
I would agree with that.
Yes, I would too.
Will you send an email to Barb? Okay.
Yeah, because if I don't, she will send an email to me.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to commissioner updates, which I think we've covered the Arrowhead.
Yep.
Extension. Do you have any more to report on what we heard today?
Let's see. Talked about the fair. They talked about, they're still going to be doing those interviews of people. There's a shortage of volunteers to work, so they're looking for people who will step up and work at the county fair next year. We are doing interviews next week for the ag educator. We have some really good candidates, so that's exciting. It was a lot of talk about the county fair. Terry talked about master gardeners. They talked about the Cindy Novi Garden and what's going on there. Set dates for next year.
How about the shack meeting?
Shack meeting, it was basically setting dates for next year. Starting to talk about getting back into person. I'm trying to figure out how to help support our health professors or professionals and move forward. Because there's so many issues with people that have just gotten tired and quit, and with the work shortage. So how can we bring more employees in and support them in the ways that they need to be supported?
Snake River Watershed looks like they were canceled.
I think they had a policy committee, but I didn't make it.
Land and broadband. We do have, I think, some very exciting trends happening. At least there's some possibilities in there. And there is some stuff that is already transpiring. So
And Mr. Chair, there is voting open now on a variety of projects. That voting closes tomorrow. So if you're interested in casting a vote, do it soon. And you can find links on the Economic Development Facebook page or the County Economic Development webpage.
Some of the things that are happening, Midco has put interduct, which is conduit basically, into some housing developments in Rock Creek and around the northeast corner of the lake, of Cross Lake. They were hoping they would have people devices turned on by now, but there is of course, there's a shortage or something. And it's some devices that they need to make the transition from the drops. And so they're saying in an email they sent me just yesterday, I believe, that they're looking.
That Rock Creek you're talking about?
Yes, the Midco project, which is Rock Creek in the northeast corner of the lake. But those devices are they're hoping will be here in midwinter, so they're looking for a spring turn on.
Isn't that Shingwatana and Rock Creek?
I'm calling the northeast corner of the lake.
Yeah, so that's Shingwatana too, Gussie. Sorry.
And the project out of Hinckley, we did we contract with that firm for? Or,
Hometown Fiber
yeah,
is doing work on the grant, the Small Cities Development Coronavirus Grant Program that we have for the area east of Hinckley. They're doing some environmental work
Yeah.
at this point.
and East Central Energy Board a couple of weeks ago gave them the go ahead to do further exploration and try to secure funding to build basically broadband to every home that they serve with electricity, which is very exciting because they cover such a large swath of Pine County. Don't hit every home, they cover a large swath. So we'll certainly keep you informed, and I'm sure if you're an East Central Energy customer, you'll see mailings from them explaining where they're at with that project. But certainly Terry was at a meeting Monday, I believe, with them, and they're keeping people up to date on what they're doing. I think there'll be a time very shortly where they will look for support from people like the board. But
One thing I could add if I could, please.
Yep.
At our conference down there, one of the meeting seminars was on the fixed wireless.
Yep. Oh,
I went to that one.
oh, excellent.
Yeah, and with Scott County, I think has a lot of the same challenges, and
Yep.
they jumped right into it. And just from what I heard, I just think it would be real beneficial to look at this www.netwavebroadband.net. That was the outfit that helped them. A lot of the same terrain issues with trees and hills and low areas, and not knowing much about the whole internet thing. I'm sure, we got a guy over there that would be really good to tap into what he knows, just to, maybe at least look at it. And being that county just went through it, and I just looked at some of the numbers of like $149 one-time installation fee for a customer. Then it was $59 if you use their router, $49 if you had your own. Trusting everybody in the room has the same challenges and knows a lot more about internet than me. They all loved it. They had testimonials of people. And out of 5,500, there were still 52 people is all they couldn't get to. And that's just because I don't know why I don't know how you're gonna get it there, where they're at.
Right.
Because they're in such a,
Must live in a cave.
pretty much, I think, yeah, which nothing against cave people, but I don't know how you're gonna get them that. Yeah. But they said the same thing. We don't know how we're gonna get it to them, but I have this information here, but
Thanks, JJ.
Yeah. netwavebroadband.net, and they helped Scott County considerably. netwavebroadband.net. If that helps at all with everything, because they recognize there was spots also with that same train, you couldn't put a plow in the ground, you couldn't get wire there, aerial, it would be difficult. I know my experience, some both plowing and aerial. So that, this might be another tool in a toolbox to just to have handy.
Please go take that survey if you haven't. And I'm speaking to myself. I need to do that, but we need people to do the survey so that we can do the best for everybody.
Technology committee was canceled. NLX, did they meet?
They did. Were you there, Matt? Did you go to Alex? Okay. So the last meeting that they had, they were saying that they weren't going to have any money and that the Amtrak had pulled away from them. And so they were really concerned about funding. Now this time, they were talking about the Job Act, the large amount of 80% of federal funds for projects such as NLX. MnDOT has hired, or they're putting a full-time person with MnDOT that's strictly going to be working on the NLX project, which was big for them. So the difference between the meeting where they didn't have anything it was really different this time. Yeah, the improvements for NLX are saying will benefit the freight, which will help them out. Largest funds since Amtrak started 50 years ago.
I heard at the transportation meeting at the conference that the line to Chicago is going to get for sure a lot of money, and the line to Duluth has got a maybe some federal money through the Federal Transportation Act.
Well, they talked to Amy Klobuchar and they were kind of upset because she did not earmark any money for this project. And she said, we didn't earmark anything, but it's going to happen. So
HRA, I think we've picked that apart pretty good, didn't we?
We did. I just would say that the board is with Leslie's, they're getting their feet under them and they're ready to go. That's
And-
why.
And Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Just based on the conversation with the study committee report, I am going to try to get us to have a joint strategic planning meeting with them in January with the county board and the HRA. So if that sounds agreeable to you, I think that would be a good way to get pointed in the right direction.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Mediation.
Want to take that, Josh?
You want me to take it?
Yeah.
We have, we met a mediation. We reached a tentative agreement. The union is going to vote on it before the 21st. So if they approve it, we will bring it to the board meeting on the 21st for consideration. I sent out an update right after the mediation that had all of the terms, which I think are all within what the board had discussed previously. And so I don't think that we would need to have a closed meeting on the 21st. And so if you look at those terms and have questions, reach out to me or the negotiating committee. Or if you think you want to have further discussion in a closed meeting, we can certainly do that. Just let me know.
Have you heard any feedback? I missed that from the union okay.
AMC Public Health, I think that's dated, isn't it?
That it was just a pre-meeting to go through all of the things that we were going to be voting on to get a good idea and to give input, because there was so much that was going to be discussed that we wouldn't have time to do it during the conference.
Facilities, Mille Band, Terry and I met with them last week. Always good to touch base with them.
They were asking for the legislative language, which David was able to get for them, just to talk about out-of-home placement for kids. And we're working really hard in becoming an initiative tribe and working with Ryan and Becky to get some of that done. So it's nice that we're able to help them to get those things done, which will benefit them and us.
COVID response planning meeting. We've had a couple of meetings and we're gonna have one tomorrow. Because the board chair, me, has been concerned with Pine County's overall COVID numbers are bad. We're as bad as they get. And I think maybe sometimes we can do more by what we do than what we say. And so we're gonna check on the numbers and see where we're at. It may be that we need to go to a remote meeting setting again for a while and see if our numbers start trending downward. I like meetings like this. I think we know that we can meet remotely and get business done. If it helps keep people alive, there's about one per week from Pine County that has died since Labor Day in Pine County. So that's not a good trend. We'll find out more tomorrow, but I think, you know, the downstairs is a mask only area. The upstairs is a mask only area. Are we doing everything we can in the county to ensure that we're not the people that are making people sick? So if you have thoughts on that between now and tomorrow, corner me and let me know.
Who else on that committee, Steve?
Me, public health, David.
Reese has been on
Reese
some.
has been on it. Looking at the statutes, what we can do, what we can't do, what should we do, what's reasonable to do. So that's where we're at.
Did other people participate on that, in that meeting? This is my first time here, so.
No, it's a staff committee.
It's a staff
Trying to
meeting.
establish policies. Yeah.
Not outside of it then.
Solid Waste Ordinance Committee. We had a meeting last week, had a good group of people. Our solid waste ordinance was written in what, 92?
Yeah, 90s.
The early 90s. Served us well. It may need some tweaking. There's some things when I read through it that I thought, oh, I thought we already did that. But I don't know, Matt, you got any?
I think it was a good meeting for kicking us off and got everybody thinking, basically is what's happening. And Caleb did a nice job laying out the stuff there for us. And, you know, we know that about half of people in the county don't use garbage pickup. And we know how many people self-haul, if I remember right too. So it's just an issue. And I think there's gonna be an education issue, and there's still people that burn, and you know, it's all going on. Where we end up, we'll have to see.
If you have some thoughts on, you know, that number of people that don't have garbage service, we knew that was about 50%. I thought the number of self-haulers would be way higher.
So did I can't remember.
But it's 5 or 6%. So where do the other, even if it was 10%, where do the other 40% of the people in Pine County, what do they do with their garbage?
Is this including seasonal properties also? Because I know a lot of them take their garbage home with them.
And people that have help me out, Kelly, an improved parcel of property, I believe is what we looked at.
We only
For
look
the
at
payment
residents.
of the solid waste fee,
Yeah,
but the number of
Garbage.
people who don't have garbage service is probably the number of residences,
Based on
dwelling
households.
units, whether they're seasonal or not.
Right. It was based on households when we did it.
so as we have tried to get an arm around our recycling things, we know how many tons of garbage were taken from recycling sheds and paid for by the us, basically. So where is that garbage now going? Goes in Josh's dumpster behind his store. I know some of it
A
does.
bunch goes in the ditch by my house.
Yeah. And so that it's an issue that we're gonna try to get our arms around. What can we do? What should we do?
Yeah, and what should we do? So, yeah,
There's other counties have the same issue, and they have had a variety of what they have determined was the best thing to do.
Does the statute say, Steve, that we have to have a pickup going in the, something like that for pickup? There's something. We had, I read it there and I can't remember how it was, but the county shall have something set up to get rid of.
May have that.
It's a shall, I think.
There was a slide that had a shall and a may, and I'm sorry, I cannot
I don't think
remember the detail.
the thing that was said for years and years, well, so many people don't have the availability of garbage pickup. That is not the case anymore. There's a garbage truck that will go down, I believe, every public road in Pine County. Whether or not they do, because people order the service, is another thing, but it is available. People choose not to pay the whatever that fee might be in their neighborhood. We have a great example of the 3 townships up in Northeast who have formed their own little garbage company and do it very, very cheaply, and everybody pays it under taxes.
That's a nice model.
It's a nice model. There are entire counties that have followed that same model. My brother is assessed, I believe, $147 a year on his taxes. And then he doesn't have curbside service, but he has several places in the county where he can bring his garbage and get rid of everything. So
They've gone from, is it 5 townships now instead of the 3?
is it 5 now?
Right. I tried to get them to come to Hinckley and they wouldn't do it.
But
Is it a shall?
So, Mr. Chair, if I can respond to Matt's question now.
Yeah.
So counties shall inspect solid waste facilities. Counties shall adopt ordinances for mixed municipal solid waste management and the provisions for issuing permits or licenses. And the county may handle hazardous waste,
Hazardous waste.
Yeah. Household hazardous waste.
But the garbage is a shall.
Garbage is a shell.
based on what we're seeing in Willow River, I mean, that was the best model we could, because we don't have to guess anymore. What would happen if we made it convenient for people? That place is amazing.
It's busy.
I think if you go across the freeway and pull into the South Pine Government, you would be amazed. I've never stopped there yet when I didn't meet a car coming out when I was going in, or coming in when I was going out, and there weren't 3 or 4 cars in there while I was there. It's heavily used. So because it's convenient, it's neat. There's no question where you're supposed to put stuff. There's somebody with a smiley face there to help you. So it's a great, great model. I don't know what that means, as if we need we need one up Highway 23 someplace by Duquette, or I don't know, you know, but it has, I think we've learned one thing, it has to be convenient. People aren't, I think we all know that. You're not gonna drive 50 miles, throw your garbage in it.
We have a big county.
But we'll get it figured out. It's a good committee.
I know that things have slowed down in Hinckley because Hinckley's gone now, but I also understand that Hinckley was used as a big garbage dump, you know, and so, but I mean, it's kind of that,
But Hinckley has a transfer station
yeah,
right now.
that's true.
AMC. The first thing I want to say about AMC is, to me, it was like going to the state tennis tournament and coming home with first, second, and third place trophies. I've never felt so honored in all my life. We get there and we're part of a 5-county Lower St. Croix watershed district. The first award they give away is to us for our involvement in that group because of the work we've done. And you don't even realize what happened, but it's quite unique. We have a rural county like Pine County that figured out how to get along with these, I won't say the words that Doug Carlson used to use, but the rich people around Stillwater and chart a course that's gonna help keep and clean up the Lower St. Croix River Basin. Some people in the beginning said it couldn't be done. And there were some pretty heated discussions at times. We had to all swallow our pride a little bit, and but we got to a working model, and we now have people that are actually in the field supervising projects that are going to be done. There was already a project done in Pine County. If you drive a half a mile south of the school and look to your right, you'll see the Hinsey Farm on the east side of Rock Lake. And there are some fences that were put up to keep cattle out of the lake. There were some berms and tiling done to keep water erosion off of some steeper slopes and some fields. And that's all a result of what went on there. So I think we can feel good about that. That's one plaque. And then Terry, stand up because
And Terry, if you're going to stand up, you have to stand close to a microphone.
we're going to ask you to say something, because I don't think we could be any more proud of the work you've done, Terry, to bring this trophy home. It's like being your football coach and going to the center down there and winning a state tournament. In my book, you guys did yeoman's work. We're very, very proud of you. That was so awesome. Stand up on stage and get this. Here's little old Pine County. There's 87 counties and we took home the hardware. And we're competing against Ramsey and Anoka and Hennepin and everybody else. Roseau County doesn't matter. We did work that was recognized by everybody in the state for how we're going to transform kids' lives. So thank you. And tell your staff that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm glad we get some trophies during my day job because my football one, you'll be long retired before we get one of them, or I'll be fired. So, no, it's humbling. But I've told you before, I said it in our presentation the other day as well. Our juvenile department, our Project Rise work, none of that happens without a supportive county board who allows us to dream and try different things. Doesn't happen without the county administrator believing in us, and it certainly doesn't happen without a county attorney who's not only involved or willing to back an effort for kids, but he's also willing to sit at a table and help write the grant, right? How many counties attorneys are sitting down with their staff in schools collaboratively to write a grant to make things better for kids? And so, so I thank all of you. I thank Andy Almost from East Central, who's allowing us to use that space, and you know, in the process through the grant money, we've been able to enhance some of the facilities there and buy Chromebooks for kids and do a lot of good stuff. So Sherry Johnson from my staff, you know, as I said in the presentation, raised her hand, said, gee, I'd like to be the grant manager. Like, it's yours. and she's done a heck of a job, and keeps us obviously being, you know, held accountable by the state and the feds, but there's just a lot of players involved in it, you know, and our even reporting center director now is second to none. For those of you that know Greg Campbell, he's very talented. He was the principal at Willow River, principal at Barnum. He's back teaching in the Barnum district, and he's a very, very talented man. And so to have him going from his day job in education to run the evening reporting center is a big victory for us. So, but again, that award is a reflection of the support that we get from the board level. So I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
there was a third award that might be more convenient if someone else maybe explained that one. And so I don't know if any of the commissioners want to talk about the service award that Steve got, or if you'd like me to do that.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, Steve got an award for his outstanding service to public service, essentially it was. And one of the things I just want to say, there was 2 commissioners that got it. That got that out of all 87 counties and all the commissioners in the whole state. So it was quite an honor to sit next to Steve and see him get that, because it was very well deserved.
Thanks. And thanks, David, and Debbie and Jen and the people, the staff that put that together, because it was very nice of you. And I told the commissioners that, you know, I didn't do anything any different than anybody else does. We get up in the morning, we try to do the best job we can. And we go to bed at night and thank God that, you know, we had enough strength to do something. So.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I'd like to add, there's a lot of people that do these jobs that don't have a servant's heart. And when they were reading through everything that you've done, you know, the years that you've been on the Lions and all of the volunteer things that you've done, you know, the Fair Board, all of these things, it just really showed the servant's heart in you, Steve. So it was a well-earned, a well-deserved award.
You guys make it pretty easy, you know.
I guess I would like to add something, being new here, and I told Steve privately down there in the auditorium, just that I was just amazed at how much he's done and the volunteer work, and it just kind of opened my eyes a bit about, you know, the guy right here. And like I said, I seen him in the grand ballroom, but I just think it's just more appropriate to say it publicly too, that I got a respect for you for everything you've done, and didn't realize how much you do. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd just echo those, just having worked with you for how many years now? 16. It's been great. I really appreciate the effort that you put in, Steve, because it's, you know, you're not getting paid obviously for the time that you put in. And so it's as a worker here, I know we all appreciate the work you do. So thanks.
Well, thanks. I got a lady I've been married to for about 46 years. I would have brought my plaque, but I didn't have the heart to wake her up this morning when I left at 6:30 to go to meet some people to ask her where the plaque was. So anyway, thank you much. Soil and water.
Yeah, that's me.
Yep.
Same old at soil and water. Few things here. One thing that's new, I guess, is a new staff position they're working on. And another thing, some new laptops. Sounds like their laptops are really old, and it sounded like we're gonna get you to help them out with it, which would be great. So And the new guy that they did hire, he's doing all his, what you do to get trained in and get to know lay of the land and get to know the procedures. So it seems to be going pretty good. So.
How's
so,
Paul doing? Pretty good?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
Paul's
I
doing
think so
good.
too.
Yep.
I should go back to the conference. Because there was that was just one thing that happened. But that conference is full of workshops. And I've been a commissioner for 15 years and I find it very enlightening and uplifting to go listen to what other counties are doing and what other people in other parts of the country in some cases are doing. And in some cases you can sit there with a smile on your face and say, yeah, we've done that. We started doing that a while ago. And but we're doing all right here. I come away from that thinking we're doing all right. I think our challenge is we all go there and we all pick up something that we could even do a better job. We can learn something. I thought I really learned something. I take a picture of it and I text Kelly and she was already ahead of me. She goes, yeah, I knew that. I got it. I'm on it. But anyway.
But that speaks for department heads.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks for
Exactly.
the people that are in control and the things that they're doing and how they're reaching out and doing those things above and beyond. So that's good that she was able to be a bubble burster.
And I put my name in the hat as I was walking by the county surveyor's booth. So I can't say I've never won anything before in my life because I won a coffee mug. I think. Anybody got anything else to say about the conference?
Only one more thing if I can.
Yep.
I think it's also important. I didn't know this, but when they're doing the fiber installs and everything, part of it, if I picked it up right, the county then actually has to own assets and own them to use ARPA money, CARES money. So if if we,
Right away, you mean? or-
yeah, if the county paid to install a segment of wire or paid to install something, then it has to actually own it. And the one thing that Scott County missed, and Netwave Broadband will probably bring it up if anybody researches or contact the people at Scott County. They installed and purchased and paid for the install of miles of fiber. And they overlooked the fact of the maintenance of it. And maintenance also includes the locating of it. So anytime somebody wants to put in a fence post, a realtor wants to put in a sign, they had to scramble and figure out. And I can tell you right now, it's maintenance. And it's any time of year, anybody can be doing some sort of digging, anything in there, and you have to go and respond.
It's a good, thanks for bringing that up, because just last Thursday, one of the techs from Midco calls me and says, Steve, do you remember anything about the fiber that goes from Pine City Elementary to Pine City High School? I go, yeah, I kind of know. I remember it was one of the first pieces of fiber the schools put in. And pretty sure we contracted with you guys to locate. Said, no, it's not on our map. Well, somewhere between two tech coordinators down the road, it got missed apparently. Somebody didn't sign a contract for locating. And so the fiber got cut, long story short. It got fixed, but it took them a long time to even figure out. The guy that's at the school now had no idea whose fiber it was. He didn't know, because he hadn't opened up the folder and looked and, it's documented.
So is this where we say, oh, by the way, the county is part owner of a fiber network in Pine City?
Yeah, we are part owner of a fiber network that goes from here to Pine Tech, to the schools, to the other government buildings here, where we are part owners of that. we have a contract with Midco for locating services because when we joined that thing, they are also a partner and their cost to being a member of that little consortium is that they're gonna maintain the fiber.
Mhm.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, and the big thing they also brought up, there's no locating with wireless, of course, because
Right.
it just works, you know. So that was one thing, just wanted to add. Thank you.
So is that details that get hammered out at a contract time? or
Oh,
what's-
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It's just something you have to know that you gotta take care of. Terry, did you have some
From
from the
the
conference?
conference. Yeah, it was the same thing. It was really interesting to go and like I said, to go see the surveyor thing and to find out that we were way on top. There's some things, that I'll take back, with mental health and that type of stuff to talk about. I went to one and I was really excited because it was how to help our coworkers. So I was thinking how to help people here that are suffering from mental health, but it ended up being on firefighters. And I didn't realize that there's a spot out there for firefighters where they can go to get help for their mental health, and I didn't realize that a lot of them die from cancer and heart attacks. And they said that every time that bell goes off, and with a fire, that it pumps something in their heart and it ends up creating a lot of heart attacks in our firefighters. So I mean, the things that you learn that you have no idea makes you really appreciate those people so much more.
Mr. Chair, just to elaborate a little bit, Terry, on your comment. So the county participates in an employee assistance program through MCIT. They do have specific programs for first responders and law enforcement. So if any of our employees who are in those first response categories need that assistance, it's only a phone call away.
Well, I know we've had it for our employees too that are not, the EMTs and that, where if we have any employee that works here that is dealing with mental health issues or financial struggles or something, they've got an asset where they can go and get help with that. So it's really good.
Sometimes you hear stuff you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And I heard something from MCIT that I didn't want to hear, but we need to hear it. And that is that it is getting increasingly difficult for MCIT, who is our insurance, to buy coverage for cybersecurity attacks. And so this guy's, they got really good coverage right now, the best you can buy in the world, but their little birdies are telling them that that may not be available in the future because it's getting to be, it's just gonna be something that somebody says, we can't afford to offer that coverage anymore.
Risky.
The risk is, so.
Get attacked 10,000 times a day, I'm sure.
Thank you, Ryan.
I would add, I went to a few of the seminars too. And most of mine were informative, just kind of telling a lot of stuff that and it is nice to go. Me and David sat in one and there was a room full of people that just couldn't quite understand the demographics going on right now. And they were trying to explain it to them where we sit with this group of board members and we all got a pretty good wrap on what's going on out there and pretty open-minded on how to try to make it better for the county and everything like that. And I look at ones that are arguing that there's too many kids sitting in the basement, not getting out working. And David leans over and he goes, I wonder whose basements they're sitting in, all these people,
Right.
so it's like, that was good, but.
I think that lady, the thing I told my son last night is, she pointed out pretty clearly, the thing that's happening with the workforce shortage really happened 20 some years ago when we quit making as many babies as we used to make. You can look at the trend line. We got less people in the age category that can work than we've had since World War II. So what do you think is going to happen? And we've got several more years before the end of the baby boomers get to retirement.
They said we're about halfway through.
Yeah.
Full chart.
Oh, and one other thing, Mark, was on the transportation bill was what to do with these oversized farm items of husbandry. Not such a huge item in Pine County probably, but when you think about a grain cart now that can haul 2 semi loads of corn, and they pull out on a township or a county road and go down a half a mile to load, that road was not designed to haul 150, even though they got great big tires. That, they got to figure out the language. What else do you do? I mean, that's the way life is. But the other thing that I found interesting, you know, you always learn more from the guy next to you than you'd probably do from the speaker. But a guy was talking about smart driving vehicles and stuff, and the guy next to me said, you know, John Deere was demoing a driverless grain cart just down the road from me. Thing would find the combine in the field, get filled up, and go back to the semi sitting on the road. Semi driver would load a semi, push the button, and it'd go find the combine in the field again. So they were able to have one less guy harvesting. They're doing that right now.
Maybe a question to Reese then, who gets the ticket for overweight?
Yeah.
Driver.
Well, that was the other thing they said. John Deere demoed tillage equipment, so they're all standing there. This thing went back and forth with nobody sitting in it. Dropped the chisel plow or whatever it was, got all done, folded the wings up, and then it sat. So then they're teasing John Deere. Well, you got to make it drive itself back to the pole shed and park.
Yeah.
But it did its job, and then it waited for somebody to come and drive it home. But anyway, enough of that.
I have another.
Yes.
I went to, when we had been in the Bland and we were talking about what are some other things to do, and the group that I was with was on how to bring entrepreneurs into our county. And I just happened to get an invite to go to a class on how to start up entrepreneurship. And so I went and sat in on that. And one of the things I'm kind of excited about trying to figure out how with our vocational school and sending people to the VOTEC, how can we help them to become entrepreneurs in our county and start their businesses here, because we need them. So I called Leslie, and it's going to be fun to see how we can work things out, because we have the tools, we have the people. What can we do to work together to get them to start? So she talked about a whole bunch of really neat places that they can go to get help, but it'll be fun, you know, just with that thought process of we're putting that money out there to help these, you know, to help people get these skills, to help them to become entrepreneurs here. And the average age of an entrepreneur is 40 years old, which I thought was kind of interesting too. But yeah, it was an interesting class.
So Truth and Taxations tonight at 6 in this very room. And we'll take a break, and we'll adjourn this meeting. We'll reconvene at 6 p.m. right here for Truth and Taxation. No other business. Declare the meeting adjourned.
See you again. By looking at the licenses, he's gonna run